Good boy. Well, look at that. Somehow found a showing that was at a decent time and nearby, so I finally got to see this movie before it disappears to video on demand purgatory before coming to streaming in late November. So I was beyond excited when Fudge found a reasonable showing, so off we went. And how did I like it? Well, I teared up a couple of times, chuckled at some obvious corny bits and amateur mistakes here and there, but otherwise, I had a really good time. If for some reason you haven't heard of this movie, or the director's push to get his dog into everybody's face and win every award that exists and doesn't exist, then you are in for a treat. Also, before I get too far into it, yes, this is a horror movie starring a real-life dog, and no, the one and only spoiler I can give is that the dog survives. Indy does not die in this movie. I remember when the film was first slated to come out that people were actively saying they were going to avoid the movie because they didn't want to see another dead dog movie, a la Marley and Me, Shiloh, Where the Red Fern Grows, etc., etc. There are so many. So the director had to come out and say that no, Indy doesn't die, please go see the movie. And see the movie people did, with the film garnering just over $7 million, which I know doesn't sound a lot in this day and age, but is a huge accomplishment given that this is an independent film with an extremely low budget of under $1 million and also an incredibly limited theatrical release. It was not playing widely at all. It did get a technically wide release, but it was still very limited. It's also worth pointing out that this film is incredibly short, running at just 73 minutes long, well below the typical 90-minute minimum mark that most movies use. It is a serious accomplishment, and when I start talking about how the film came together and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, you can kind of start to see why. Stick around, this is going to be an interesting review. But as usual, I'm getting ahead of myself. What is this movie even about? Does the story justify the short experience? Is it just watching a dog get scared? What about the dog? Well, Good Boy follows a dog, specifically a Toller Retriever, named Indy, looking after his owner, a man named Todd. Todd appears to be suffering from some sort of disease and suddenly decides to relocate to his late grandfather's secluded house in the woods, with Indy tagging along. As the two settle in, Indy starts to suspect some lingering presence is after Todd and does his very best to protect his beloved owner. Before I get into it, let's get into the acting. First things first, yes, Indy is indeed played by a real dog named Indy. He's the director's dog and has no formal animal actor training at all. Because of this, most of the scenes focused on him reacting to certain events or to ghosts are genuine reactions taken somewhat out of context. I'll explain a little bit later, but yes, it's really, really damn cool to see a movie almost entirely focused on the perspective of a real animal. It brings so much interesting nuance and exploration to emotional performances in a perspective we just don't really see outside of maybe some animated movies like Flow. Here, I can kind of see why the director is trying to push the Oscars to have a Best Animal Actor category or something. Indy would probably win immediately this year, even without the training. The only other notable actor in the film is Todd, Indy's owner, played by actor Shane Jensen. I really don't have too much to say about him at all. He gets the job done, but he's never really a standout performer. To be fair, it is difficult for him since he is technically a side character next to a dog, but some more emotion or a wider range of actions would have been nice to see. I just don't think this is a very strong performance overall, but to be fair, the focus isn't really on him in that regard. I'm sure with Good Boy's success, Jensen will get more work, so hopefully he lands a project where he can actually push his talent. It also didn't help here that Jensen is mostly just a voice. In order to get Indy to act more naturally, his owner had to stand in as a body double for Jensen, with Jensen's lines being added in post. So really didn't help him in that regard, and it does kind of feel like Todd is lacking in the movie because of it. But it does kind of lead me to mentioning that, while not an actor at all, the director and the co-writer of Good Boy and Andy's actual real-life owner, Ben Leonberg, as the stand-in. It is such an interesting idea to not only come up with this story and just the theme following an animal, but also an absurd amount of patience to even shoot this movie. And I have to commend him for it. Good Boy took 3 years to shoot in Leon Berg's house with an extremely minimal cast of essentially only 4 people plus a dog, with most shoot days being just himself, his wife, and Indy. I'll get a little into it when I go through the behind the scenes stuff just a little bit later, because I think it's just so incredibly interesting and cool. But first, gotta give props to Leon Berg. I think the finished product here, albeit short and with some flaws, is a ton of fun and quite the testament to animal acting in general, and also just dogs in general. As a dog owner myself, I quite love it. That being said, let's talk about the film as a whole. The story here is simple, but artsy. Because the film takes place from Indy's perspective, the camera is also at Indy's eye line, being very low to the ground. In fact, for almost the entirety of the film, no human is seen from above their shoulders, and if they are, their faces are usually blacked out or unseeable. Now, clearly this was a practical choice so Leon Berg could stand in for Jensen as the body double, but it's also an artistic choice so the audience can align themselves more with Indy and project their emotions onto him and see where the dog is coming from and how he's feeling. Throughout the film, we follow Indy as he explores this creepy old house from his eye level. We get to see him have nightmares, see strange shadows, and observe just general goings on around the area. We get a few predictable jump scares here and there, but there's nothing overly scary. There are times where Indy can feel like he's in some danger, but the idea here is that the malevolent force is going after his owner, not just Indy. The film is certainly tense, with Indy seeing these dark phantoms hiding in the background, or maybe what appears to be ghosts haunting the area, but overall it just isn't very scary. I think it's way more tense. I think the pacing works pretty well. There are a lot of moments of Indy just looking at stuff going on, but it never feels boring. There's just enough action, and when things start to get more intense, you start to find yourself rooting for the dog to succeed, which is great. Speaking of success, I think this film is a perfect introduction and explanation for several different ways that audiences digest films, not only for the cinematography with the dog level camera work, but also how the film handles its animal actor to convey an extremely emotional tale of protection and fright. You see, as the rational person knows, dogs aren't actors. Indy never knew he was in a movie. He probably doesn't even know what movies are. To him, he was just being asked to hang out and play with his owner. Maybe follow a simple obedience trick like sit, stay, or come. Just how does that equal an emotional performance then? Outside of the scenes of Indy playing with Todd, which is just how a dog plays with their loving owner, how do we get the dog to feel like they're in danger? The answer there is a little thing called the Kuleshov effect. For those that don't know, the Kuleshov effect essentially is manipulating how the audience feels about a scene through the juxtaposition of shots. For example, take a look at my dog here. This is Rally. Say hi. Here she is in a neutral position. She's not really feeling anything, despite maybe a little confusion as over why I'm walking by her. But if I follow that up with a shot of her empty dog bowl, suddenly she's hungry. If I put images of my discarded shoes by the front door, maybe she's suddenly forlorn because her owner stepped out or something. Good Boy is full of moments like this where it relies on the audience to project their emotions onto the neutral party, being the dog. Here's another example. Here my dog is sitting up, alert, staring at something. Is she scared? Maybe she's concerned over something going on? If I put this video then of the closet door slowly opening up to darkness, I'm sure the audience would assume that, yeah, she's probably scared of what's in there. When in reality, closet door is closed and I'm just standing there making funny noises to get her attention. Good Boy loves doing scenes like this. There are so many like that. And I think it's one of the most effective bits of filmmaking the movie could do. However, I do think a lot of those shots are slightly ruined based entirely on Indy's demeanor. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but hey, I've been a dog trainer for well over a decade at this point, and I pride myself on reading dog body language. It is different for every dog, but I feel like Indy here is clearly just having fun in most of the movie. His tail is constantly wagging, his ears are almost always forward and alert, and his hackles are never raised. I don't feel like most people would catch on to that, except for maybe the hackles, but it's never a focus, so that's great. And while I can nitpick and point it all out, I can also commend that clearly, at least on film, he was treated properly and clearly enjoyed being in this movie, which is wonderful. Animals in film are notoriously difficult to work with. This isn't just because they're hard to train, which is certainly true of most animals, but most movies will have multiple animals playing one part because each one is trained to do one particular trick. Maybe one is supposed to come in and put a water bottle in someone's lap or something. The main reason, though, that animals are so difficult to work with is because they require a lot of time and a lot of patience. Dogs in particular only have a certain amount of time in a day where they can perform for the camera due to their energy and well-being. Can you see now why Good Boy took 3 years to make? The director could only work in about 1 to 3 hour chunks with who knows how many takes before it became usable. Indy wasn't trained. He'd mess up shots constantly, and that's why animal work requires a ton of patience and has so many guidelines. Mess up and it's animal abuse, but do it well and you have star performances like Indy's with no harm whatsoever to the animal. Love that. Of course, that also isn't to say this movie is perfect. It's a great, unique idea and clearly a fantastic final product, but there are some general issues the movie has as well. Don't worry, I'm not blaming Indy for any of them. The first bit I have is that the film is just full of little amateur nitpicks here and there, which is a staple of most independent films. Most are completely forgivable and a product of the low budget and animal acting, like crappy CGI to make it seem like Indy crashed through a window. That's something. One issue that I'm curious about, if they just didn't have the right equipment or maybe they didn't have any better takes, is when Indy barks. It peaks the audio, so it sounds like this. I feel like that would have been a simple fix if they were already adding in audio in post, so I'm not sure if that's an oversight or what. Other issues are just more general story issues. I absolutely love this story. I think it's a great metaphor once you realize what is really going on, but it also has some very awkward moments that aren't fully explained or feel like they don't connect properly with the story. A big one are the foxes. They appear in a couple of scenes, but don't really seem to add much at all besides a sense of foreboding. Maybe they were supposed to be an omen, but foxes generally aren't symbols for those. So I'm not really sure what the idea was. Maybe I'm just missing it. This is definitely an art house movie, so it's got a lot of metaphors and a lot of symbolism everywhere, but I feel like it needed to tone it down just a little bit. Lastly, I think it's just too short. The pacing is great, and it's wonderful to have a film focused entirely on the dog, but a little more time and context would have been great. Maybe some more scenes with Todd and Indy playing with each other early on, or maybe seeing how Indy reacts more with Todd's sister Vera, who is essentially just a voice on the phone. I get the timing constraints and the budget issues, but some more time to not only show how Indy naturally responds to his owner and Vera would have gone a long way, I think, and aided in showing the difference at the house as things start to break down with the ghosts and the entities showing up. Overall though, I think Good Boy is a wonderful film that showcases the strength of animal acting and even dives into how animal actors should be treated, in the behind the scenes footage anyway. And while the film does get a bit too artsy for its own good, it's still a fun romp with an incredibly likable main character. Since the movie's critical acclaim, the director has been asking the Oscars to offer to allow Indy to be nominated for Best Actor award, or for a new category entirely for animal actors, and frankly, I'm wholeheartedly with the second option. I feel that animals deserve recognition for their work, even if they can't appreciate or understand it. Hollywood's history with animal actors is incredibly prolific and not always great, but some attention on the history and opening a conversation into animal treatment while on set would be amazing. Surprisingly, the last film to have that kind of conversation was Jordan Peele's Nope. So that's something. But anyway, Good Boy is well worth a watch. It's solid, slightly flawed by its story and low budget, independent nature, but overall it is still a triumph for animal actors and canine lovers everywhere. Don't be afraid, go see Indy. So ultimately, Good Boy gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around for another one. Yeah, I'm so happy I finally got to see this one. As a dog owner, I absolutely love these kind of films where they have the dog, and having Indy be such a focus was just so much fun. He just seems like such a good boy. Pun intended, but overall, it's really cool to see the director now just going around trying to shove Indy in everyone's face. I really enjoy that. Clearly the dog is having a blast, so I'm very happy with how the movie came about and how we can now have conversations about animal actors and animal recognition in acting. That is a huge thing that not everyone talks about. I do kind of wish that Jordan Peele was able to explore it a bit more. It was a very big focus in Nope, but given Nope's overall story, it really wasn't able to explore it fully, just kind of have it as metaphors and plot points, but something more stable and explorative into animal behavior, I feel would have been great. And I can think of so many animal actors that would immediately win the Best Animal Actor award. I mean, look at Cujo. Look at Pet Sematary. Look at the dogs in John Wick. Come on, there are so many animal actors out there that deserve some recognition. It'd be really cool. Anyway, I don't know, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. After that, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a video. And yeah, that's it. Have a great day, and if you're not, have a better one. See ya.
I'm just a ghost in your stereo, the fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost song alone, and I'm just a ghost in your stereo.